I think this is a moment I'm going to remember the rest of my life.
Thousands line the streets to honor Reverend Billy Graham during a procession from his mountain home to his final resting place here in Charlotte.
I don't know of any person in all of America that deserves more honor than Billy Graham.
His casket made by prison inmates carried by family. And now leaders from around the world will make their way to Charlotte to say their final goodbyes to America's pastor, including the president.
We don't know any more about plans or intentions of the former presidents. We do know the president, Trump, will be coming.
We're taking you through that journey that started today as we honor the life and legacy of Reverend Billy Graham.
And just a few hours ago, that procession ended at the Billy Graham Library, where he will lie in repose Monday and Tuesday. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jamie Bowl.
And I'm Molly Grantham. We've been following that 130-mile-long journey on air and online since the motorcade's departure from the Billy Graham Training Center at the Cove in Asheville this morning. The motorcade headed east on I-40, going through Black Mountain, then taking 321 down through Lincoln and Gaston counties before getting on I-85 into Charlotte. Now, before ending at the Billy Graham Library, they traveled through Uptown and they made a stop at Graham's childhood church along South Boulevard.
And we have live team coverage like only you'll see on WBTV. Our Alex Giles live in Uptown. Ben Williamson is in South End. We're going to check in with them in just a few moments. But first, our Steve Crump live at the Billy Graham Library. And Steve, boy, it was quite a scene this afternoon as the casket was received there by his family.
That's right, Jamie, and you talk about that scene. It can be described as touching, it can be described as moving, especially as that funeral procession ended right here in front of the library. You talk about Billy Graham being very famous, a minister to thousands and millions of people who have heard his message around the world. But when it came time to come back home for the final time, he basically did it in front of close friends and family. Anticipation becomes an understatement in describing such a meaningful arrival. This receiving line of relatives and well-wishers clearly demonstrates that Billy Graham was a man who cared about family, and those linked to him, like his brother-in-law, Leighton Ford, found value in knowing one of America's first televangelists.
We've had the privilege of being so close to someone who has been part of a very special movement of God in our time.
More than 100 miles and 6 counties later, the famous preacher was brought home to the library that bears his name. With his son Franklin and the other Graham children looking on, the wooden casket made by prisoners in Louisiana was received by his grandsons and husbands of his granddaughters. Years of planning went into this moment, and Ken Barun of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association finds symbolism in the way he came home.
Everything lies at the foot of the cross, and that's where Mr. Graham is going to lie, at the foot of the cross.
God's forgiveness. Known as the preacher to the presidents, Graham family spokesperson Mark DeMoss confirmed to WBTV that President Donald Trump will be headed to Charlotte this coming Friday as many pay their final respects.
We do know the president, Trump, will be coming, and we were pleased to hear that President Bush and Laura Bush were coming on Monday because of a conflict they have next Friday.
Now, it's expected to be a very quiet day here at the library on Sunday, but starting Monday and going into Tuesday, talk about a long visitation, 28 hours over 2 days. For now, we're live at the Billy Graham Library. Steve Crump, WBTV, on your side.